All right, welcome back to the show, everyone. Hope you all are having a good day so far. So, if you've been following this whole David Falk, who was Jordan's former agent, longtime agent, and the battle that's going on just because he said one thing with the LeBron camp, if you've been following it, then great, because I wasn't expecting this. But thank you guys in the comments for letting me know this happened. Apparently, Stephen A. Smith has David Falk on. So, how do I do this in a quick manner? David Falk made a quick statement about if Jordan were to cherry pick his teams and team hop, you know, build super teams, he would have had 15 championships. Then the LeBron camp comes out, and it's funny. I'm actually forgetting LeBron's agent's name. I'm actually really happy about that right now because I really don't like this dude, and he'll get brought up here anyways. Yeah, he came back and he tried to make it like a racial issue. It was the weirdest rebuttal I've seen. Some of you have given me a little insight in the comments, and I appreciate it. But still, what we seem like we all agree on is no matter what he did, the reason he did it was disgusting. You know, it was just like that was a low tactic to try to use in a situation like this for a debate that he already created. Stephen A. Smith came out and said, yeah, well, you know, all this hatred going back and forth, it's all starting from the LeBron camp. Rich Paul, by the way, that's the name of the guy, the agent, said it's all coming from the LeBron camp. They keep throwing out these punches, you know, trying to cancel the 90s, trying to diminish the talent from the 90s, trying to say Jordan, you know, couldn't do this or couldn't do this, and basically just diminish his legacy. So he's pointing it out very clear, like a lot of us do, but it's cool to see somebody in the mainstream do it, where he's saying, well, you're forcing us to retaliate and respond in defense, and then you're acting like the victim afterwards because we're not saying what you want us to say. So it's kind of like a bully mafia mentality going on. Anyways, that brings us to today. Stephen A. Smith has David Falk on because this is the guy who started this fire. Even though it was just one little quote that he said, it was enough to blow things up like this. So let's check out the Stephen A. Smith show. Not something I watch on a regular, but in this situation, let's do it. I'm going to link the original video down below for you guys. So if you want to check it out, the link is right there for you. Yeah, everyone, please leave this video a like. I'd appreciate it a lot. And I don't think there's anything else to say in the intro. Let's get right into this.
Staying in the NBA, but moving off the court, Michael Jordan's longtime agent extraordinaire, Mr. David Falk, weighed in on the GOAT debate this week. Not surprisingly, Falk backed his former client, but he took it a step further. Speaking with the Sports Business Journal, Falk had this to say, quote, I really, really like LeBron. But I think if Jordan had cherry-picked what teams he wanted to be on and two other superstars, he would have won 15 championships.
Okay, now the last little tidbit I want to add before we get into this is, so this is the one time you see somebody who has represented Jordan say something that could annoy the LeBron camp, right? I can't remember the last time I've seen anything like this. It's so rare, right? Now flip it, okay? So this is the one time that something's been said, and then Rich Paul immediately within 24 hours is on a show talking about it, right? You can't just take the hit and move on. You got to be petty. Now think about over the years how many things has come out of Rich Paul's mouth to bash Michael Jordan, to belittle Michael Jordan, diminish his accomplishments, and everybody in the Jordan camp stays quiet. Like an actual boss, you know what I mean? So it's ironic and it's kind of hilarious to me how sensitive that side is.
End quote. This prompted a response from none other than LeBron James' agent himself, Mr. Rich Paul. Yep. Take a listen.
We can't have revisionist history, and we all want to just determine who's the GOAT and who's the best and so on and so forth. But I just thought that was a little beneath David to say that. Michael never had to leave. Michael's never been the underdog in any finals.
That's actually not true. He was an underdog in 1991. Was he in 93? I'm not sure. In 93, he was again in 1998. So at least twice, just off the top of my head too. If I actually like had time to research it right now, which I'm not going to make you wait through, there's probably a third one where he was the underdog.
Not one time.
So in other words, lie, okay? Because the lies come out rapidly with this guy.
Michael never had a 24-hour, 365 news cycle. He never had shows built strictly to criticize him. People made millions of dollars criticizing LeBron James. That was their entire job.
That doesn't make him a good basketball player. Michael Jordan had paparazzi surrounding him at all times. Anytime he left the house, even in his car, paparazzi all over the place. But that alone doesn't make Jordan great. So I don't know what's the deal with this pressure. So what, you had pressure. Everyone has pressure.
Michael played for Dean Smith. Michael played for...
LeBron chose not to go to college. So yes, Michael Jordan did play for a good college coach because he went to college. Yeah.
Phil Jackson, and Michael had Jerry Krause. I'm the biggest Michael Jordan fan ever. I love Michael Jordan.
No, you don't.
And I don't think Michael Jordan would have used the term cherry pick, so I'm not up here to discredit Michael Jordan. I
thought the cherry pick term was brilliant because not only does he cherry pick his own teams, but he doesn't get back on defense, and half of his points come from cherry picking.
Jordan transcended our game to a level that we all benefited from.
What the hell do you mean, Rich Paul?
Yeah.
When you say Michael never had a 24-hour, 365 news cycle, he never had shows built strictly to criticize.
I'm sorry. The one thing I didn't say and I wanted to, Michael Jordan never had to leave. Right. I feel like I already talked about this, so I'll keep it short. Jordan didn't get drafted they didn't start winning in 84. They didn't win in 85, didn't win in 86, didn't win in 87, didn't win in 88, didn't win in 89, did not win in 1990. So what do you mean Jordan never had to leave? Jordan could have left at any point, getting frustrated with the Bulls front office. If he was LeBron, he would have left. He would have never even met Phil Jackson. And if he did, he would have got Phil Jackson fired, mind you. You think LeBron James would have stuck around with the Bulls when after 6 years, the best help he can get is Scottie Pippen and Horace Grant? Are you kidding me? LeBron would not have stuck around in that situation at all. Look at what he had in Miami. Why did he have to leave Miami? Did he have to leave Miami? He had a super team out there with Pat Riley being the head of operations who wants nothing but to win. And then he had Spo, who has become one of the greatest coaches of all time. Why did he have to leave Miami, huh?
What shows are built strictly to criticize LeBron James?
Mine.
See, this is the BS.
SxADk. Angry old hoops.
This is the BS. We cover the sport. It's a 24 hours news cycle. There are plenty of positive things that are said about LeBron James on every show.
Yeah.
Every show. This is where the whining and moaning accusations come from.
Oh, yeah.
From him and his camp.
They're soft.
What 24-hour, 365 news cycle has shows built strictly to criticize him? So in other words, the shows that criticize him never, ever, ever give him credit, huh? Ever.
I hope this teaches him a lesson because he's mainstream media. Stop giving him credit then. Stop starting every statement you make about LeBron James. You know, he's a great basketball player. He's on the Mount Rushmore. He's a great father, and he's done great for the community. But he chokes a lot. Stop prefacing stuff like that, dude. Just be honest.
Look,
they call you a hater anyways, so it's not working. So stop kissing their ass, Stephen A.
I ain't got time. I'm not going to even waste my time with this. I'm going to get to my next guest. I'm going to get to my next guest right now. I'd like to welcome to the show none other than Mr. David Falk himself. Long time, buddy. How you doing, David? How's everything?
Good, Russell. Delighted to be with you, Stephen.
You said what you said.
Sound is rough.
You've had an opportunity to reflect on what you had to say about LeBron James in comparison to Michael Jordan. The floor is yours. What would you like to say now?
Let me say at the outset, clearly LeBron James is a great player in any era. You'd be foolish to suggest otherwise. His longevity, his statistics, are amazing. I think what makes Michael the GOAT goes way beyond the court. I think on the court, Michael obviated the center position. Prior to Jordan, you needed the Elijah Watson
Yeah.
Ewings, the Kareems, the Bob Laniers. And the way Michael played, he made it unnecessary to have a great center.
Yeah.
Look who he won the championship with. Bill Leddy.
I'd say he did what Steph eventually kind of did it too. You change what we think you change the way we know that you can win. And not having a good center, Jordan never had a good center his entire career. And being a gunner, basically, a shooter, a shooting guard who's going to get the job done and lead his team to victory, it wasn't a thing back then. And then Steph, he proved that a point guard can do it from the 3-point range. We've never seen that before him. So yeah, there's very few players that come around that change what we know about winning in the game of basketball.
To Dickie Simpkins, Bill Cartwright. And I think that had a huge impact on the game. Secondly, and perhaps even more importantly, I think Michael individually broke down every barrier that existed for professional basketball players, and in particular African-American professional basketball players, to become national marketing brand ambassadors. So the whole generation of LeBrons and Kobe's and Steph Curry's having their own shoes and being in commercials did not exist before Michael came in the game. Magic didn't have it. Bird didn't have it. Dr. J didn't have it. Kareem didn't have it. And I think that's a preponderant impact. I think third, I believe he's the first NBA player to become a billionaire. I believe he's the first NBA player to become a majority owner of an NBA team. And finally, he had a tremendous impact on fashion. He changed the look of the way the players play with the long shorts. He made bald is beautiful. And so I think beyond comparing statistics, who had more points, who averaged more, even who had more championships.
I see what he's saying. I can cut through the BS. He did more for the game than anybody else ever did. Straight up. Straight up. I know what he's saying. He's just going through and listing all the things, and I appreciate it. But that's really what he's saying. And as far as the billionaire thing, I can't remember if it was Magic or Michael Jordan. One of those two hit $1 billion first. LeBron James is already there too, by the way. So now it's going to become way more of a common thing.
I think Michael's impact is extremely broad and deep in what he did to change the game. I don't think any other player in history had that kind of an impact.
What do you make of people who would look, and I want to get far beyond those two individuals that we're talking about for the moment, but I got this one question to ask you. What do you make of folks and their assertions that the times that we're living in now, the advent of social media, the digital stratosphere, the microscope that is on players in today's game like never before, the impression is given that even the great Michael Jordan, with his unparalleled popularity, I compare him to no one. The only person I've ever compared him to was Michael Jackson, for crying out loud.
Yeah.
That's how popular Michael Jordan was. When you listen to people talk today, they talk about the climate, the environment, the society that we're living in today, and they say it's far more invasive than it has ever been, which makes the road tougher for a guy like LeBron James compared to what Jordan had to endure during his playing career. You've been around a long time. You know this business like the back of your hand. What do you make of that, of those assertions?
Interesting.
Social media has brought the fans closer to the players. Everyone can express their opinion.
It's going to be interesting because Jordan couldn't go anywhere without, and you guys remember, they weren't cell phones. They were big, giant, heavy cameras and a crew. So there's camera crews and everything, people following him the second he would walk out of his hotel. So he couldn't even leave his hotel room. He talked about it and he showed it during The Last Dance. I think it was in '93, where he was like, yeah, I'm getting sick of this life, where he's just sitting in there, laying down on a couch, smoking a cigar, and just trying to chill and watch TV, make time go by, because he had no freedom.
You don't have to work for a newspaper or a television station to have an opinion. But I think it's the natural tendency when you're the best at anything, there's a human tendency to try to tear people down. And certainly Michael had that because of his immense popularity.
Oh, yeah.
You know, people criticize him, for example, for not being political enough.
Yep.
Not expressing his desire for certain candidates.
Yep, they called him a ball hog. They said he would never win. They got on him for gambling, all kinds of crap.
And so, sure, I think that the social media has changed the game. I also think if you want to be objective, the game has changed itself. I had this discussion about a month ago with Rod Thorne, who's a very dear friend of mine, who drafted Michael Jordan.
Oh,
and he
yeah.
said to me, which I didn't know, he said, do you realize today that the average NBA team takes 1/3 more shots than they did in Jordan's era?
Uh-huh.
So when Jordan averaged 38 points a game, if you increase that by 1/3, that means he would average 52.
Jeez.
Now, I think Michael could have averaged, and Michael took 1.7 threes per game. That's all he took. I think he could have averaged almost anything he wanted if that was what was required to win. That's all
There
he
it
cared
is.
about was winning.
See, Falk gets it. I say that all the time too, because we all get caught up in how much could he score, dude. I mean, honestly, like he said, if he could have averaged 50 PPG in a season easily, but the most important question is, would they win that way? So for Jordan, I always say he would average as much as he needed to win. And in today's game, I would say that's about 40 points. So that's what I think that would be his sweet spot. Not that he can't average more than that. He obviously could. But just like in Chicago when they were winning championships, his sweet spot was around 30 to 32 points. And he stacked rings. So now, change that for inflation, add a third, and we're at 40.
And I think his record of 6 out of 6 is the greatest in the history of the NBA. Never lost the championship.
Yeah, sure.
Well, don't forget, he also never allowed a championship series to get to a 7th game. He took you out in 6 or less every single time. That's the Michael Jordan that we're talking about here.
And he's 2 for 2 in the Olympics. He's 1 for 1 in the NCAA. So he is 9 for 9 in championship situations.
David, expanding beyond Michael Jordan and LeBron James, when we think about the age that we're living in, one of the discussions your comments prompted was player empowerment and the kind of things that have taken place in today's NBA and in today's sports world. As an agent, looking at the state of affairs that exist, not just in the NBA, but professional sports, as it pertains to sovereignty involving players, player empowerment, et cetera, what are the kind of thoughts that come to your mind as to what we're witnessing today and whether or not it's good or it's bad for the world of sports in this day and age?
Great question. So number one, I believe that great players, have always been empowered. I think the biggest difference between today's generation of players and, if you will, Jordan's generation or Magic's generation is how the players exercise the power. Now,
good
if
point.
you understand that in 1982, that was a long time ago, the NBA ushered in a salary cap. And for the last 43 years, the players have essentially owned 50% of the revenues. So they're 50-50 partners with the league. The only way players can make more money is to grow the business of the NBA. Now, I believe that when players exercise their power poorly and they make statements that denigrate the game, I think that they're impeding the ability of themselves to make more money, which is foolish.
Yeah.
So I'll give you a couple of examples. You want to talk about player empowerment? In 1984 and 1985, there were 2 players in the history of the game that opted out of the group licensing program. One was named Michael Jordan. One was named Patrick Ewing.
Okay.
They did not allow the league to use them in group licensing. And I opted out of both of them. You're not allowed to do that today. In 1985, Patrick Ewing became the first player in history to have an early termination option in his contract. He signed a 10-year deal for 3 times more money than Magic made the year before as a veteran. And he had the option to opt out after 6 years if market conditions change.
Damn, Patrick Ewing. I wonder who his agent was. They were kicking doors down.
Is empowerment. Michael Jordan was the first player to have a love of the game clause that did not require him to, that allowed him to practice at North Carolina in the summer, which came to be known as the love of the game clause.
Yep, the love of the game clause.
Darnell Valentine in 1980 became the first player to challenge the league's ability under paragraph 13B to prevent players from doing endorsements or interviews without permission of the team. That's in every contract now. Valentine versus the Portland Trailblazers. So I can give you 100 examples of player empowerment. Patrick Ewing became the first rookie in history to be the highest paid player in the league. He made 55% more money than Kareem, who's the highest paid veteran of all time. I believe that that's empowerment. Danny Ferry did the same thing in 1990.
Really?
And he clearly was not one of the great players in the history of the league.
Danny Ferry, wow.
I believe that players in every sport have always had tremendous power. But I think that today, I don't think they use it as judiciously as they should if the goal is to make more money and grow the business.
I agree. That's where a lot of us have a problem with what they're doing in like the the All-Star break and stuff, how they're not really putting in an effort to put on a show, because that's supposed to be like the way to grow the brand. And if the players keep demanding more and more and more, yet they're not putting the work back in to grow the brand for the future, I see what Falk is saying. It is kind of frustrating to see. It gets to a point of no longer being about empowerment, but it becomes more about entitlement. And that's where it rubs a lot of us the wrong way, I do believe. Correct me in the comments if you disagree.
Well, let me ask you this, David. Give me an example, if you can. If it's compromising, please don't bother. But if you can, give me an example of players that have exercised influence and exercised power, but you don't believe it's necessarily for their good or for the good of the game. Could you highlight an example that wouldn't be good to illustrate your point?
And that's how you know Stephen A is a pro. That's a great follow-up question.
Well, so the simplest one I would say is triggers. Okay. Now, I personally probably made 10 or 15 major trades. I made the Patrick Ewing trade to Seattle. I didn't want to make it. I didn't believe in it. But he and the Knicks agreed it would be best to have a change of scenery.
Okay, I think I got my answer. I think David Falk was Patrick Ewing's agent then. Okay. He also represented Allen Iverson.
It was a 13-player trade. I traded Stephon Marbury to New Jersey in a 13-player trade with Sam Cassell. I did that behind the scenes. The minute you announce publicly as a player that you're not going to play anymore, Harden as an example.
Harden, Jimmy Butler recently, yep. It's becoming more and more common.
It makes it so much harder to make the trade for the exact reason that Rich Paul indicated is hard for LeBron, because you're shining the spotlight on the player, and the other teams around the league know that the player is demanded a trade. He doesn't want to be there. There's going to be a problem. And so they're not going to offer fair value. Mm-hmm. And so the very goal the player has of moving, he frustrates or makes more difficult by publicly announcing it. Now, the opposite of that, interestingly to me, and I'm a big Nico Harrison fan, is the fact that Dallas only talked to one team to trade Luka.
Yeah.
Luka's one of the top 5 players in the league, and there wasn't competitive bidding. I know they had their reasons for it. I don't understand all the dynamics.
We're starting to wonder if it was the deal with the NBA in order to get that number 1 draft pick. I mean, I don't know. It looks mighty sus.
So I'm not here to criticize it, but it surprised me that if you're gonna sell one of the most valuable assets in the league, that you wouldn't want to have
a bidding war,
the highest level of competitive bidding.
Yep.
But the trade is the easiest example I could give you, Stephen. Or now I'll give you an example on the agent side. Okay. I believe that every time an agent comes out publicly and says any of the following: my player's not getting enough playing time, he's not getting enough shots, not making enough money, the team is taking advantage of them, they are advertising that they've done a really lousy job of being an agent. Because if they were doing a good job, none of those things would be happening. And if they were happening, then the answer is to sit down with the owner or the general manager behind the scenes and try to figure out a way to improve. Now, I'm going to tell you a funny story, okay? In 2000, I signed my only high school player in my 50-year career, a guy named Darius Miles. He was the third pick in the draft. And
Yes.
I went to a game one night in LA to see Elton Brand. Our company at that time represented 8 of the players on the Clippers. 8. I didn't represent them all myself. I only had Elton. I walk into the locker room to see Elton, and he motions me to talk to Darius. Apparently, on the way from the locker room, from the court into the locker room, Darius hadn't played a minute. He cursed out the coach, Alvin Gentry, who I've known
Alvin
since he was
Gentry.
assistant coach.
Yeah. Gentry took over in Phoenix for D'Antoni for a stint.
Rounded Kansas, great guy.
Mm-hmm.
So I go over to Alvin and I say, Alvin, what's the problem? He said, David, I love Darius, but he's not working hard enough. So, okay, so I told Darius to come to my hotel room the next day. And I said to him, son, do you want to play or do you want to sit on the bench? He said, of course I want to play, Mr. Falk. That's why I'm unhappy. I said, well, I don't think you want to play. And he said, why would you say that? I said, because if you want to play, you have to show the coach that you want to play. And the way you show him is by working hard.
Practice.
He doesn't feel you work hard enough. And I promise you that if you work harder, he will play you more. That was on a Thursday. The next night they played the Houston Rockets. Darius played 30 minutes and had 21-9. I went to congratulate him after the game. Couldn't find him. Where do you think he was? He was in the weight room.
Oh,
probably in coach's office.
After the game.
He's in the weight room.
Nice.
Now, I went up to Coach Gentry, who I really like, and said, Alvin, is this complicated? You want him to play, you want him to work, and he wants to play. Now, most coaches in the NBA today are reluctant to tell their players they're not working hard enough. Now, I'm not talking about the Popoviches or the Pat Rileys. I'm talking about the younger coaches because they're afraid they're going to lose the relationship with the players.
Yeah.
The players are so macho.
Nowadays, they're afraid they're going to get fired. The coaches are.
I want to tell a coach that is bothering them that they're not playing. They don't think that's cool. And I think you need to communicate. So my job is to talk to a guy like Alvin and tell him that. And it solved the problem. And so I think on both sides, this is a thing that should be done behind the scenes, privately. My mom, who's a very highly educated woman, my life mentor, she taught me when I was very young, never hang your dirty laundry out publicly.
I was just about to pause and say that line. That's the perfect line. Yep, I believe in this 100%. It's why I'm not on social media or anything like that. I don't believe in airing out my personal things in a public forum. When did this become cool?
And so I think demanding trades, complaining about how much you're making, those things are not productive to achieving the result that you want to achieve. And on top of it, I think it demeans the game. And I think one of the great differences between Jordan's era and today's, I think the players had a much greater, as a whole, I'm not saying every single player, had a much greater respect for the game.
100%.
As a whole. I'm going to tell you a great story that you've never heard. When Michael Jordan was recruited by Ted Leonsis, the current owner of the Washington Wizards, to come to Washington and be the president, the day he was going to get final approval from Abe Poland, Wes Unseld, who was the GM of the team and the face of the franchise for many years, from 1967, this was 1999, he called me up and asked me to set up a meeting for him with Michael. I didn't attend the meeting, but apparently at the meeting, Wes told Michael he was going to leave when Michael came. And Michael told him, if you leave, I will not come. I respect you. You paved the path for young players like myself. What's the problem? And Wes said, it has nothing to do with you. Abe Poland runs around telling everyone else that he's like my father, and I'm the lowest paid general manager in the entire NBA. He's disrespecting me, and I'm quitting. And Michael said to him, please don't quit. I will take care of this. So went to Poland's house, and Poland says to him, I'm ready to hire him, very excited to hire you. What should I pay you? And Michael, who's a very, very intelligent man and a very savvy businessman, said, pay me what you think is fair. And Poland said to him, well, I understand the range of salaries for the president of the team is between $1 million and $2 million. So I'd like to pay you $1 million. And I think Ted probably had a heart attack when he heard that because he figured all the work was over. And Jordan turned to Paul and said, I have a suggestion. Why don't you pay me $2 million? Give one of my $2 million to Wes, and I'm going to give the other $1 million to charity. He worked for free,
Yeah.
and he took care of us. So Michael had a tremendous respect for the players that paved the path before him. Now, one of the things that he's done.
So he did that as a player, and then he did that when he came to the front office point too. He's like, he's not trying to knock somebody off their position to steal their job. He's like, nah, he didn't even want to get paid more than them. He's like, no, I want fair pay with him because he's been doing this longer than me. So that's a cool story, man. That's uber respect right there.
He's allowed the whole generations that came after him for the past 40 years to enjoy incredible commercial success off the court. Mm-hmm. And again, that's one of the reasons I think he's the GOAT. But he always expressed a tremendous, whatever differences he might have had with Jerry Krause. And if you saw The Last Dance, there were many.
Of course I did. Of course I did.
Kept it private. Now, I was amused when Rich Paul, who I really like, said that Michael had the advantage of having Jerry Krause. And I don't want to say anything negative about Jerry Krause because he died, and I'm good friends with Reinsdorf. But if you ask me, would I put him in my top 25 GMs over the last 50 years? I would not. I think he made a lot of very imprudent decisions. He drafted Charles Oakley over Karl Malone.
Wait. No way. That was the same draft class. Holy shit. You saying MJ could have had Karl Malone?
Did Brad Sellers over Johnny Dalk as a national player there. I think he made a lot of terrible decisions, but they won, and that's all that matters.
Yeah.
David, I want to know. I've always been very interested in asking you this question. When Magic Johnson and Larry Bird came into the league, obviously they deserve an immense credit for building the popularity of the NBA brand. Most would argue Jordan took it to another level, but he did so because his individual greatness was so supreme, so awesome that, you know, he took the game in a different direction, but it also individualized the game more. And as a result, people view that as hurting the game. I look at LeBron, and not that he decided to depart from Cleveland to Miami, but how he handled it. As you talk about
disrespectful. There you go. Okay, I'll shut up.
Respecting the game, respecting the league, respecting the owner, etc. And the fact that he was willing to be so publicly defiant, or dare I say dismissive, of Dan Gilbert at that time, I thought it served to compromise player empowerment to some degree because collective bargaining negotiations took place thereafter. Remember, there was a Chris Paul trade to the Lakers that was ultimately nixed once Dan Gilbert had raised holy hell by writing a public letter to the league, etc. When you think about the damage that has been done to the league, which obviously is flourishing, and so we got to be careful with that word damaging. But if there's a negative, is it veering away from team with Bird and Magic in Boston and LA to the individual greatness of a Michael Jordan? Or is it along the lines of player empowerment and sovereignty exercised by the likes of LeBron James that clearly has appeared to have a residual impact? What is your thought about that question?
Well, first of all, when LeBron went to Miami, he was a free agent. He had the right to pick any team in the league that he thought would best. I think the mistake he made, in my opinion, was a PR mistake. The PR mistake was when he did the show, The Decision, with Jim Gray, and he said, I'm going to win not one, not two, not three, but 8 titles, which he still hasn't won. I think
it's like the best comparison I can think of is like, if you're going to break up with somebody you've been with for what, like at that point, 7 years, you might want to do it low-key, private, respectfully. What he did is not even tell the person he's breaking up with them. You know what I mean? He never had the conversation. Instead, he live streamed it in front of millions of people to say, I'm breaking up with you. I'm getting together with this new chick, and we're going to have not 1, not 2, not 7 babies. Like you don't have to rub it in the fans' face like that. You don't have to rub it in the franchise's face like that who supported you all those years. You can be more respectful and still get the same thing done.
If I were LeBron's, and I love Maverick Carter. I'm very good friends with Maverick Carter, who's LeBron's marketing guy.
If David Falk was LeBron's agent, that would have never happened. This is like, Rich Paul is. He's any publicity is good publicity kind of agent.
I would have told him, do the interview, and the day you win your first ring, the first, not 8, have a show, hold up the ring, and say, this is why I came to Miami. Mm-hmm. I couldn't achieve this in Cleveland. Now, interestingly, if I can give you a contrast, and I'm not saying one is right, one's wrong, it's just personal preference. I asked Michael once, would you ever like to play with Bird and Magic, sort of like to recreate the Dream Team Olympic experience?
I bet you anything he's going to say, yeah, it would have been fun, but he was really, his goal and his mission was to beat those guys, so it wouldn't have felt right. Now let's see if I'm right.
And he said, are you nuts? I would never want to play with Bird and Magic. There it is. I wanted to beat their butts every night on a one-on-one competitive level. And just different personalities. That doesn't make LeBron's choice wrong. And I want to be crystal clear. I have great respect for LeBron as a player.
Before he does the normal PR thing, let's just put it into context. In my opinion, the greatest of something is somebody who doesn't want to join the greatest. They want to beat the greatest. How do you get to the top of the mountain? You think of like Mortal Kombat back in the day. You gotta go through every single one of these greats and beat them until you beat the guy who's currently at the top, being the greatest, who it was kind of magic at that point, and you knocked them off, But then the LeBron James style and the new modern style that he's created because of it is not to beat them. It's to admit that you can't beat them and then join them. And then to become a supreme power, It's like freaking NATO or something.
I think his longevity, his impact, he's a great athlete. I think he probably could have played other sports. And clearly, when they asked me, do I think he's in the top 10? Of course I think he's in the top 10. Now, I had an interesting discussion over dinner with President Obama about this very subject, like who's number 1, who's number 2.
Nice.
I would say to you publicly, what difference does it make who's number 2? Only thing that makes a difference is who's number 1. Who runs around 4 years and I say, God, don't you think that the team that lost that Super Bowl was a great team? No, they didn't win the Super Bowl.
There it is. That's why I always bring up the Buffalo Bills in the 90s, because I was a fan of theirs. They lost 4 Super Bowls in that time. Did we celebrate it? Not for 1 second. Are you kidding me? Our hearts were broken every year after year. Our hearts being ripped out. There was nothing to celebrate about losing the Super Bowl. Nothing. And we never have. I bet some of you young people out there don't even know they went to the Super Bowl 4 times. But if it was LeBron James on that team, then that would have been like, that's greatness right there, to go to the Super Bowl 4 years in a row. Now, my goal of the game, we've lost the script. The goal of the game is to win. There's a winner and there's a loser. Yeah, you have to lose some along the way, but the goal is to win. You celebrate the wins. You don't celebrate the losses. That's a loser mentality.
Won or you're not. And clearly LeBron...
Let me rephrase. You learn from the losses, you celebrate the wins. Like that. You don't celebrate the losses.
Be in the pantheon of great players for a lot of years. Now, you could say, arguably, that the greatest player was Bill Russell because he won the most championships, 11 out of 13. You could say Oscar Robertson was the greatest player because he averaged a triple-double. Yeah. When Michael was asked in Cleveland, when they presented the top 75 players of all time, who do you think is the greatest player of all time? Without hesitating, he said Oscar Robertson. When they asked LeBron, who was the greatest player of all time, without hesitating, he said LeBron James.
Wait. Can I just hear that back?
Without hesitating, he said Oscar Robertson.
That was Michael Jordan?
They presented the top 75 players of all time. Who do you think is the greatest player of all time? Without hesitating, he said Oscar Robertson. When they asked LeBron who was the greatest player of all time, without hesitating, he said LeBron James.
Wait a second. This happened at the. I apologize, you guys. I need to hear this clearly. Because okay.
That the greatest player was Bill Russell because he won most championships, 11 out of 13. You could say Oscar Robertson was the greatest player because he averaged a triple-double. When Michael was asked in Cleveland...
Okay, so I did hear it right. So we're talking at the top 75 celebration. They asked Michael Jordan who's the greatest of all time. He says the Big O. Did they ask LeBron James and he says LeBron James? Is this real?
When they presented the top 75 players of all time, who do you think is the greatest player of all time? Without hesitating, he said Oscar Robertson. When they asked LeBron who was the greatest player of all time, without hesitating, he said LeBron James. Now, if someone asked me, who do you think is the greatest agent ever of all time? I'd say Larry Fleischer. He was the head of the union. He created the rules that allowed free agency, all the things he did. Now, if someone thought that I was the greatest, I would let them say that. I would let you say that. I would never say that myself. I just don't think it's appropriate for you to have to make that comment.
That's embarrassing to say something like that. Like, who do you think is the greatest of all time? Me. Come on, dude.
I want to be crystal clear nationally. I would never want to offend LeBron James. I like him. I think we have a good relationship. I think I have a pretty good relationship with Rich and Maverick. And I admire LeBron for his commitment to the game, his longevity. And I think he's a completely different kind of a player than Michael. Most people...
See, he's programmed too. David Falk's programmed too. So he said something, that was pretty critical on LeBron. Basically just how much he gloats about himself. He promotes himself. And now he's going to patch it up a little bit with some compliments. Mainstream media tactics. Excuse me.
If you were comparing Kobe and LeBron, say Kobe's more like Michael and LeBron's more like Magic. And I think you make an argument that Magic Johnson is one of the greatest players of all time.
He's on my
now
top
think
five.
About this, Stephen, okay? Yeah. In 1979, in the NCAA final, Magic squared off against Bird. At the time, it was the highest rated game in the history of basketball at any level. Magic won. 1 year later, the Lakers were playing Philly in the NBA Finals, and in game, Kareem gets hurt. Magic plays center. I don't know the exact. I think he had 37 and 14. Had the baby hook to win the game.
He had 42. Yep.
42 and 17, right? Huge rebound.
Yeah.
He won the game, was the Finals MVP, and Rookie of the Year. Now, if he had a 1 year career, and I'm here to give my props to Magic Johnson, from the time he won the NCAA to the time, he'd be in the Hall of Fame just for that 1 year. That was one of the greatest impacts in basketball, college and pro, in 1 year. On top of that, as popular as Michael is, I think if Magic had the proper representation as a rookie, and we actually thought we were going to represent Magic. I think Magic could have done a lot of the things that Michael did at 84 in 1979, but he didn't have an agent that had the marketing background or savvy to understand the impact that Magic made in the number one media market, entertainment market in the United States.
David, before I let you get on out of here, I'd be remiss in neglecting to ask you this question. You and I go back many years, many decades. We've known each other since 1995, for crying out loud. Rough around the edges at the beginning because I was ignorant and didn't know any better, and didn't appreciate your brilliance until later on when you took me under your wing and taught me so many things over the years. I can't even express my level of gratitude to you, and we're friends to this day.
30 years,
I wonder, and I want to end this interview by asking you, being, I'll say it, arguably the greatest agent ever in any sport, considering what you know, what you've negotiated, the connections that you have had, the inroads you have made along the way to influence the game, to influence sports overall, what are your thoughts about today's business as it pertains to agents in today's business compared to what it was when you were doing it? I'll give you the floor. That's my very last question to you. Take the floor and answer that question, please.
It's a great question, Steve. So number one, I think that the principal role of an agent in business, whether you're a Hollywood agent or a sports agent, is to negotiate contracts. And something approximately 70% of all the contracts in the NBA today are not negotiated at all. If you're Wembanyama and you're coming in the league as the number one pick, or Cooper Flag, there's no negotiations. There's a wage scale. If you're a great player like LeBron or Curry or Kevin Durant, Luka Doncic, there's no negotiations. There's a maximum. If you're an average player, most of the teams are pretty well capped. There are mid-level exceptions, biannual exceptions. There are minimums. And so the role of an agent has been dramatically curtailed by the rules. It's very hard to make an impact. If I could give you an example. So in my career, as I mentioned, I had two rookies who are the highest paid players of all time. I negotiated the first ever $100 million contract for Alonzo Mourning in 1995 for $116 million for 13 years. And I made him turn it down. 1 year later, he signed for 105 for 7. He would have played 6 years for free. And he thought I'd lost my mind when I told him to turn it down. That was dramatically higher. I negotiated a contract the same year for Juwan Howard, who's a great friend and a great
dude. Who did you not represent? Yeah. Juwan Howard had a massive deal too.
He made 70% more money than Chris Webber on the same team, playing the same position. They went to the same college. I couldn't do that today.
I remember.
You just can't. You can't do it. So the ability to separate, like in football, a great receiver separates himself. That's how he catches the ball. In today's NBA, an agent can't separate himself, and that frustrates me. It takes away a lot of your creativity. A lot of the things that I did that enabled me. Now, I want to return the favor to my friend Rich Paul. I was disappointed that Rich Paul mistakenly compared my comment about cherry picking, which means that you are picking where you want to go, which a player has every right to do as a free agent, to the fact that three of the greatest coaches in the history of college basketball, Dean Smith, John Thompson, and Coach K, recommended me to their players. And the reason he recommended me wasn't because they liked me. It's because our track record with the rookies was so superior to anyone else in the business that it was an easy decision for them. Now, if I could give you and your listeners an analogy to answer your very specific question, Stephen, I think the greatest investor in the history of the United States was Warren Buffett.
Buffett.
He's also one of the richest men.
Coca-Cola, Apple. Yep. I forgot what else. Guy, he's still alive, too. Guy is just... Yeah. I know about Warren Buffett, too.
Now, if the Securities and Exchange Commission, which regulates investments, passed a rule and said no investment manager can get more than a 6% return. You know, it's illegal to get more than 6%.
If that's the case, just put it all on the S&P 500. Take the guesswork out of it.
He would turn Warren Buffett into a first-year kid out of business school. I'll give you another example. Okay.
Yeah, I get what he's saying. Yeah, it's having a low ceiling over you and it prevents your potential. As far as being an agent, that would be the same in a finance world. You can't earn more than this; you'll be penalized or whatever. So you might as well just earn 6%. Okay, well now that becomes easy to earn 6% year over year. You know, you don't have to take any risks, and then everything starts looking the same and it gets redundant. I feel what he's saying here.
So frequently, I'm going to take LeBron back to his days in Cleveland. Okay, early days. The NBA passes the rule. They say no player can score more than 12 points a game. It's like fouling out. Once you hit 12, you got to sit down. Now, a guy like LeBron James would score 12 points in the first 3 minutes of the game. He could literally go to a movie, come back and meet with his teammates, after the game. So the season ends, and he goes out to lunch with his teammate, Matthew Dellavedova. And he says, Dally, what kind of year did you have? And Dally says, average 41 minutes and 12 points a game. And how'd you do, LeBron? LeBron said, well, I averaged 3 minutes and 12 points a game. And Dally says, well, I guess we're both the same kind of players, because the rules have homogenized LeBron's ability to be LeBron.
He can't stand out.
And that's what the agent business, in my opinion, has
Great
become.
Analogy.
So I was intrigued when the current MVP, Shai Gilgeous-Alexander.
And you guys know I'm really prone to good analogies. I love analogies. That was a fantastic analogy, Mr. Falk.
Decided to represent himself. And while I think that there are many reasons that Shai Gilgeous-Alexander needs an agent, he may want to get traded. He may be having problems with the team. And there's a famous expression, Stephen, that a lawyer who represents himself has a fool for a client. And so it's very difficult.
Okay, can I hear that repeated?
And there's a famous expression, Stephen, that a lawyer who represents himself has a fool for a client. And so it's very difficult to walk in and say, I should be, I don't want to be here. That's why you need third-party people. But I think that a lot of great players are going to do what Kevin Durant did with Rich Kleiman, a little bit what LeBron did with Maverick Carter, and have one person as sort of like their business manager, because the role of the negotiations has to climb. Now, the other part that's critically important is marketing. And, I think that, I'm friendly with Aaron Goodwin. I think Aaron at one point had LeBron
as a Barbie doll,
Howard, Kevin Durant, and Horford. He did an amazing job for those guys in marketing. He got LeBron the $100 million deal with Nike as a rookie, got a big deal for Dwight Howard, royalties.
God, I think I forget about that sometimes, you guys. Just take a step back and think about it for a second. You're just graduating high school, and then you're signing a $100 million deal with Nike. How wild, man. What a wild start to his adulthood.
I think there's a very, very important role for the star players to have someone off the court. But as I said at the conference, if I were coming out of law school today, based on the state of the union of the sports world, I would definitely want to be in sports, but I probably would not want to be an agent. I almost definitely would not want to be an agent. And that's why this spring, when my last client, Otto Porter Jr., retired, I let it run out. I don't want to sign any more players. I love basketball. I love what it's done for me. I am humbled by the fact that some 14 Hall of Fame players have entrusted their careers to me, including the GOAT.
Nice.
Everyone knows, how important that relationship has been in my life. I would expand that, include Patrick, Coach Thompson, who's the number one. John Thompson in my book, Steve, I don't know if you read my book, The Ball Truth. John Thompson was the most influential man in my life. Not the most influential coach, not the most influential client, the most influential. I learned so much from John that he should have been
a great man.
My agent.
Great man.
And so I've been privileged to work for the best and the brightest, privileged to meet people who are great in their profession like you. I admire what you've done in your career since we've known each other from the time you were a cub reporter in Philly. And I want to end by saying this is not last thing I want to say. In the day, Magic, Isaiah, Mark McGuire, Herb Williams, who I really like, represented by a guy named Charlie Tucker, who's a fun guy. I like Charlie. And our guys, they were more urban guys. Our guys all came, as Rich pointed out, from Carolina, Duke, Georgetown, Kansas, and the coaches basically gave us the players. They didn't do it to do us a favor. They didn't do it because they had any benefit. They did it because they wanted their players to make the most money that they could. And there was sort of it was like the Bloods and the Crips. There was sort of a little competition during the All-Star game in '85. I won't name names. Some of the players from that group tried to recruit Michael to leave us and go with Charlie Tucker. And Michael was really offended because he's such an incredibly loyal person. And
Yes, he is.
and so it's not a battle between Michael and LeBron. I think they're two of the greatest players in history. Not necessarily the two greatest players,
Right.
two of the greatest players in history. LeBron's earned my respect,
Okay.
a long time ago. And if I say anything that offended him, I would publicly apologize. Not my intent. I think it, as Michael correctly points out, maybe it's a good way to end the discussion.
It's sad, but this is why I always say, and I'm not saying the opportunity will ever come, but like if this channel blew up someday, and I got asked to join some major network, I would say no, because it's it. Whatever's going on behind the scenes with this LeBron James mafia, everyone is terrified when they criticize LeBron James. They get brave once in a while and they throw a punch, but then within 24 hours, they apologize and they reel it back in. Why do you think that is? I don't think everyone's a coward. I think there's a bigger reason. I think there's less choice involved in this than we think. And that's why if you guys have seen the commonality, a lot of us independent analysts or whatever you want to call us, people, whatever, regular people on the internet talking about basketball. How about that? Most of us are very critical on LeBron James, and we don't hold back our punches. But that's because they can't get to us, But everybody in the mainstream, they're very careful what they say about LeBron James. It's not a coincidence. It's not because each individual analyst on mainstream media is a coward. There's something bigger going on here. And Perkins and Stephen A. were the first two that really spoke out against it. That literally the Clutch Media crew will come at you. They'll text you, they'll call you, they'll find you in the real world and ask you, why the hell did you say that about LeBron? Why you got to disrespect LeBron like that? Blah, 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 blah. And that's all they're telling us. I imagine there's probably more.
It is almost impossible to compare players from different eras. When Bill Russell won 11 titles, there were only 8 teams in the league. When UCLA won all those championships in a row, there was only 16 teams in the NCAA tournament. It's a lot easier. You start out in the Sweet 16. Today, getting to the Sweet 16 is a pretty good accomplishment for a lot of teams. But what I think separates Michael from every other player is not how many games he won or how many points he scored. It's the impact that he made on the game in so many different areas. As I mentioned earlier, being the first player to be a majority owner, the opportunities that he personally and individually created. There was a whole bunch of people, Stephen, after Jordan came to the league. It's like the search for the fountain of youth. They want to know, was Harold Miner,
Baby Jordan,
was he going to be the next guy?
It's 2025, and we're still looking for the next Jordan. How wild.
Penny Hardaway going to be
Grant
the next
Hill.
guy. At one point, it was going to be Ron Harper was going to be the next guy. And the truth is, there'll never be another Michael.
T-Mac, Vince, Carter.
He came from an incredible family, 2-parent family, incredible coach. And so let's leave it that,
Stackhouse.
Let's leave it that way.
Well, listen, we'll leave it that way. I mean, Michael Jordan is my GOAT as well, but that's no disrespect to LeBron James. There's no disrespect in being perceived as one of the top.
Why is it always there's no disrespect to LeBron James? What about all the other guys? Why don't we say, and I don't say this in general anyways, you don't need to preface it this way. Jordan's your GOAT, Jordan's your GOAT. Cool. You don't have to say an apology to everyone else. But why is it that they only apologize to LeBron James? It's no disrespect to LeBron James. What about Magic Johnson? What about Bill Russell, Kareem, Wilt, all these guys, okay? Bird, like Tim Duncan, like Kobe. Like, why don't we say no disrespect to them? Or why don't they say no disrespect to Kobe or Magic, but I got Jordan as my GOAT? Why is it always LeBron James? What is this? I feel like the longer this goes on, the more like this just feels like such brainwashing. And I'm witnessing some people, that's a terrible pause, sorry, but it's appropriate for right now, who are, even though he's fighting it, he's still brainwashed to a certain extent. That LeBron has to be number 2. There's no option for LeBron not to be 1 or 2. And if he's not 1, you need to apologize to him. This is stupid.
Players in the history of basketball or anything like that. But the bottom line is this: no matter how grateful we all are to have seen great players and have witnessed the greatness of guys like them, I've also been very, very grateful and very lucky to witness the greatness of you, my man. We go back decades, and I appreciate all you've done to edify me and help me along the way in my career. And I'm honored to have had this conversation with you, David Falk. You're one of the best ever. So I really, really appreciate you taking time out of your busy schedule to sit down with me and talk with me about this subject. All right, you take care of yourself, okay? We'll talk soon.
Thank you for your time, words. I'm very grateful.
All right, my man. Take care. The one and only David Falk, right here on the Stephen A. Smith Show of the digital airways of YouTube.
Yeah, man. I mean, that was it's unfortunate. This was an unfortunate interview, but also a very interesting interview. David Falk is a pretty fascinating guy, it turns out. So, yeah, I appreciate learning quite a bit of stuff. Like, I like hearing about what was going on in Washington with Jordan and all that. And he has a very interesting perspective on a lot. And yeah, he's been an agent for the majority of his life, it looks like. So he's got a ton of stories, and it's cool to see what's going on now. I mean, guys, really, I'm a little disappointed because after a 39-minute video, my major takeaway is David Falk is scared too, just like everybody else. He pissed off the LeBron crew, and now he's backpedaling. And now he's scared what they're gonna do, you know. So they're gonna try to slander him, you know, and do like a smear campaign or whatever it is. He's scared of it now. So once again, I don't know about you guys, I would never want to go mainstream because of this, because I don't want to get threats for having an opinion and wanting to voice my opinion in all countries of America, the United States of America, having to be scared of voicing your opinion on a sport, on entertainment. No thanks, man. I'll stay small. I'll stay low key. If you guys ever wonder, because you guys do ask me, I'll leave it on this because this is a long video. And honestly, I'm a little drained. For all those who ask me why I don't have a camera, very simple. I don't want to be targeted. I want to be able to maintain my integrity. And in this crazy world, if you get big enough and you get enough attention, well, if you see my face, then it's not hard to figure out who I am. If you know who I am, it's not hard to figure out who my family is. And if you can figure that out, you know where all of us live and what all of us are doing. I don't want that for my family. You know what I mean? Just because I have an opinion on a sport that somebody might get butthurt about, there are a lot of crazy people out there. So, yeah, I decided right off the get-go, you know, I'm doing this because I've missed having people to talk hoops with. I've accomplished that with all of you, and I thank you all so much. I've been really enjoying talking basketball with you guys, and you guys lighting up the comments is what makes that possible, because we actually have a conversation going, and I'm very thankful for it. No need for me to reveal my face. If I do that, I just become a target, and there's danger that comes with that, because some people are really crazy. You see them in my comments too, you know? You see them every day in my comments. Well, I'm not worried about it because they don't know who the hell I am. But if somehow they got a hold of my identity, my address, my phone number, all this stuff, now we're talking about I'd have to probably disappear off of YouTube. You know what I mean? For safety reasons. So I never wanted to get to that point. And so that's the answer to a lot of your guys' question. And I've been kind of evading that question, but I might as well just be completely honest right here because it relates to this video. Yeah, I don't want to be famous. I don't want to be famous. You know, it's not my thing. I just want to talk hoops with you guys and have fun. Anyways, guys, I am out of here. I apologize for the length of this. This is probably about an hour long at this point. So I'm going to get out of here. I'll see you all in the comments. There's a lot to talk about. So shoot a comment down below, and we'll have a good conversation as we always do. All right, everybody, I thank you very much. The link to the original video is down below in the description. And yeah, like the vid, subscribe to the channel if you want more content like this. And most importantly, in this crazy, wild world, is to be formless, to be shapeless, and to be water, my friends. Peace out.